Hello, everybody. This is Scott Palmer. I'm Executive Officer of the Builders and Remodelers Association of Greater Boston. Welcome to our webinar today, Going for the Gold at PRISM 2020. We are very excited to be holding our annual PRISM Award. It'll be being held October 22nd. Right now, we have our portal open. I'll be showing you ways to get there. As a matter of fact, the PRISM Awards .org site is up and the portal is open. The entry portal can be accessed right from the site. So it's pretty easy to get to, and you can see pretty much everything that, all the categories, et cetera, that we're offering this year, around 65 of them. Today, I'm very happy to be have some great participants for this discussion today. I have Sue Hawks with the Collaborative Companies. There's an annual contributor to the PRISM event and does quite well as a PRISM winner. I have Katara Yoshioka, who's a well-known photographer of properties, interior, exterior work, talking about what he will be, what he does when he produces prize-winning photographs. And unfortunately, our architect slash judge, Carol Kurth, had to drop out late notice today. But the good news is I've got our Bragby president, David O'Sullivan from O'Sullivan Architect, to stand in. And David, although he does not judge for PRISM, has done a lot of judging, as has Sue Hawks. So we'll for sure be covering the judges aspect of this. Everything is being recorded. We'll have this for playback. I'll share that with you all after the event when I get it off the cloud. You can use the chat to ask questions. Business Development Director Tom O'Brien and I will be monitoring the chat. And at some point after the call or after the event, we'll open up the lines and you can ask questions over the phone or through the computer if you'd like. That being said, I'll be more than happy to turn this over to Ms. Sue Hawks. Thank you for joining us, Sue.
Well, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're managing to try to stay cool in this godforsaken heat, but I'm sure we'll remember it all very happily come January. So PRISM, I think I'd like to start by outlining a little bit of the items that we think are important when selecting a candidate for submission. First and foremost, you obviously want to represent the best and the brightest. So you're going to select a particular submission that is representative within the category of what you feel deserves to be awarded. I think sometimes it's in the eye of the beholder, but at the end of the day, you've got to recognize that these judges are looking at things electronically. In the old days, they used to actually get in a bus and go tour everything. So those days are long gone. And then, so the way it's presented and the images that you present, I'm certainly going to be able to give the attaboy baton to the photographer next, because that's clearly one of the most important things when you're creating and crafting your presentation. But I thought we'd start with going over the entry form, because I think that gives you an outline of what the judges look at and how we go about submitting our entries and what we think is important. I think from a standpoint of experience, from an entry standpoint, and also the input that I can contribute from being on the other side, which is the judging standpoint. I feel that's given us a little bit of an idea and an outline of what's important and what people are looking at when they're judging you. So let's start with the entry statement. Now, the entry statement really needs to be an outline of the project. If you imagine these judges sitting looking at something with a name on it, they've got a category, they've got a submission, they have absolutely no idea what your project's representing other than the global category. What's very important is to give them some context so that they can look at this and really understand how it fits into the category, an outline of what it's encompassing, whether it's a multifamily attached or a townhouse attached, what is the position of this particular product in the marketplace, how does it fit in, what's special about it, an outline of really giving somebody of feeling like, I understand what this project is all about. I understand what this unit is all about. I understand what this particular design is all about. So that entry statement is really important to give people a real barometer and an understanding of what they're going to be looking at. Very general. The next most important thing is the target market. And I think you can take every single entry and every single category and you can assign it a target market direction. It's important the judges understand that you know what you're going after for results. What is your target market? What's the demographic? What's the affluence? What's the geography? What types of things are they interested in? It's important that you understand so you can at least explain to the judges how you interpreted it, and therefore they're going to be looking at your entry with a clear understanding. Did they make it or didn't they? Did they respond to the needs of the target market or did they miss it altogether? Only you can explain that to somebody who's going to look at it. So that target market information is really important. I would suggest it be things like proximity to walking. Certainly things that have to deal with beyond the demographics, but is it aimed at young professionals? Is it aimed at empty nesters? Is it aimed at a family? These are things that the judging has to understand in order to be able to give it adequate points or not. The next position I think that's important is really kind of understanding how you fit in the immediate market. Are you at the top of the market? Have you been challenged with trying to sell, lease, or design or build something that because of all the costs that you can't control, you have to get top dollar? I mean, those are things that I think are important to explain to the judges as well. Are there challenges that you had to face that you mitigated because of what you did right? Or conversely, did you inherit things that became challenges that give you credit for digging yourselves out of it? And I think that's something that I know as a judge, that can become a formidable opportunity for success that other people, if it was easy, then anybody can do it. If you undertook something that was a challenge and you were faced with it and you resolved it, then that's a plus. And a judge is going to give you an extra credit for that. The other piece that's really important in the entry statement is the results. It's great to say you did this, 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 and this, and this, but there are two things that people want to be able to measure the success of. One, how much did it cost you? And I don't mean per dollar, I mean in general. Many of our projects are blessed with very generous marketing budgets, and I'm extremely sensitive to the fact that that's not true on a small project or a singular entry. It's always much easier to be able to have a wonderful position if you have the money to do it. What's much more challenging and frankly rewarding is if you're doing something on a very tight budget and you're able to be successful because of that. And again, I think that's a plus from the judge's standpoint, because they are going to appreciate the value of the differences between budgets. So I would get that in there. I think it's very important people understand what you're working with in terms of money and dollars and how smart you were with those dollars. That's a piece of the target market results. And then of course the success. How much success did you have with this? What were the actual results? How many units did you sell? How many did you lease? What type of price point were you able to get? How much over the market did you get? Conversely, if you're dealing with design, what was the impact of creating a model that all of a sudden you doubled your traffic? I mean, those are bits and pieces of information that aren't asked for anywhere else. You need to get that up front, right, and center so that people appreciate that you did your job. And this is the result of it. So those are the key ingredients I would suggest that you start with in terms of your entry statement. And again, they're not delineated anywhere else. So it's really important that you put them in that entry statement. And I prefer doing it in a semi-bulleted format rather than a giant run-on paragraph that people's eyes are going to cross by the time they get to the bottom. You want them to pick up the salient points of what I just mentioned and how they fit, and people will read that a lot better. And I think you'll find that you'll get a lot more success by laying it out that way. Before I go on, I didn't know whether you wanted to get past the baton a little bit in terms of the photography, because I think that's really the #1 one most important visual piece. And maybe we can come back to me, Scott, or David, however, if you want to add a little bit of something to my beginning here. David, anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Sue on the bullet thing. When you're doing a lot of judging, you're trying to read through multiple entries. And so concise specifics, it's not really worth putting in a lot of adjectives about what you feel the project is. It's really good to get facts in there and get statistics. Keep it simple. Tell the results, as Sue was saying. Don't long drawn out paragraphs that talk about, like, you know, lush landscaping or this or that, are not the types of things that really are beneficial or helpful when you're trying to judge.
And so a picture can be 1,000 words. So we'll turn it over to the photographer here, because that is the second most important thing. And it could arguably be the first after the entry form. Again, unfortunately, good photography is not inexpensive. I think it's important people understand that although iPhones do wonderful jobs, if you're trying to set the stage for not only winning awards, frankly, being able to use the photography for other parts of your advertising and your portfolio and your website, it's so important to hire a good photographer and capitalize on your, and I'm giving you all the credit here, this is good lead on for you, but all the opportunities to amortize that expense over other things. So don't look at it, this is just a cost for the entry of this awards program. The reality is you're going to be able to use that photography throughout the year and more if it's good enough. And that good enough is really going to make a difference between you winning and not winning. So to that end, go for it. Keanu, go for it.
Katara, you're muted still, Katara. So right-hand corner of your picture, the unmute button, and then you are able to take that screen share too, sir.
Okay, so
Perfect.
let's see.
I gave you screen share. It should be green.
Okay, Zoom. What I would like to show is on my desktop, and oh, this is it. I think so. Here we go.
You got it.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see okay?
We have a white screen.
Did you do the screen share?
I did do that. I think.
Choose what you
Oh,
want to
here we go.
Yeah. There we go.
How about that?
That is beautiful.
Oh, you can see it now? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So here, what I would like to say today here is, what do I look for when I'm photographing the project? So when I work with the architects, builders, or designers, the first thing we would do is work through the site. And I ask them about the project, the concept, ideas behind the project, any requests from their clients before they start the project. And were there any challenges to overcome to make it happen? Are there any areas that they would like to empathize with, and why? If they have any iPhone shots of the space from the beginning of the project, I would like to take a look at them in order to understand the project better. When I work with the clients who sells products or technology for the home, I ask them, what do they do? What do they sell? How does it work? What is so unique about this project or technology? And how the homeowner will benefit from it. I ask clients to demonstrate how it works. And based on that, I developed the ideas and a concept on how to proceed the photo shoot. So it depends on the clients that my photo shoot is so different. And during the photo shoot, I bring tethering tool so that my clients can see what I'm shooting on either iPad or laptop instead of the small monitor, LCD monitor behind the camera. So that my clients can check each shot. I think this is no longer an option. It is a necessary tool for collaboration and communicating with clients. Architectural photography is an extremely specialized field. The quality of the photo is very important. The composition of the photo image is very important. Staging also an important part of it. But there are so many more factors that involved in order to produce professional architectural photo image. Number one, exposure. The brightness of the photo. If the photo image is too bright, it washes out the highlight values. If the photo image is too dark, it won't show the detail of the dark values or overall details. Number two, the color balance. The color of the interior should be accurate. The white wall should look white. The gray cabinet should look gray. The photo image should not look too orange, magenta, yellow, or too blue. Number three, need to correct the keystone effect. The keystone effect is when you point out the cameras to photograph whole entire building. The bottom part gets larger, and then as you go to the top gets smaller. That's called the keystone effect. That needs to be corrected. And the lens distortion, when you're using the wide angle lens, and the far left and the far right, that the straight line becomes distorted. It's called a barrel distortion. And if you're using a longer focal length, it goes to the different opposite, going like that. It's called a pincushion distortion. All those distortions need to be corrected, and otherwise people will notice. There are so many other factors to watch out for, such as extending the dynamic range, contrast, saturation, sharpness, and the choice of the focal length of the lens, and the list goes on. So the extending the dynamic range is that the people's eye can perceive, that you can see is so much more than what the camera can do. So what we do is we photograph the same frame of different exposure, the bright ones, the middle range, and the darker ones, and then combine together to produce one image. So to make it closer to what your eye would perceive. And the contrast, if the contrast is so weak, the image will look flat. And if it's too high, then image will look not natural. And a saturation is like, you better be really careful about the saturation, because in a digital photography, you tend to exaggerate the saturation so much, and the floor look over too saturated, like get orangish, yellow, the reddish look, and you need to knock it down a little bit. And sharpness. If you put too much sharpening with the Photoshop, that the image look like edge of the image will look kind of halo-ish look to it, and that should be avoided. And let's see. And the choice of the focal length. It's a human nature that people tend to walk into the place and you want to use widest angle lens to capture whole entire space. But it's not necessarily resulting in one of the best image by doing so. And using instead mid-range wide angle lens to normal focal lengths, even longer focal lengths, to crop the air to find what's the best focal length for that particular space. That's kind of you learn over the years of experience. And in order to produce award-winning photo images, should follow what I just mentioned, all those above. Just like anything else, it will take at least 10 years to become an expert. Photography is not the exception. If you haven't worked with professional architectural interior design photographer yet, perhaps this is a good opportunity to consider seriously. Your amazing project should be documented by professional photographers who have a solid photography knowledge, experience, and the Photoshop skills. And most importantly, the photographers who can understand the client's needs and willing to take extra steps to produce ultimate photography images on your project. You should include the photography fee when you generate the next job estimate, if you haven't done so. This extra step could change your business. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Gitaro, that was great, and the photographs in the background are exceptional. So
Oh, thank you very much.
we, just so everyone knows, we do have a listing of around 7 or 8 photographers on the PRISM page, including Gitaro's contact information. So feel free to reach out to, I think they're all getting pretty busy right now. So give them a
Very
shot.
great.
And we have one question, Gitaro, from
Yes.
Clayton Thompson.
Yes.
What is your best advice about staging and props? When does an image become too cluttered and overwhelming? How much
Well,
is just enough?
the best thing is take out everything what's on the table or what's on everything first. Empty out everything and then start the placing thing and what works the better. And I think I love the idea of collaborating with designers and other people's idea to sort of have a couple of options. And instead of arguing over everything, no, it shouldn't be that. I basically photograph one's ideas and then some other person's ideas. And then I also combine my ideas as well. So that's how I create the staging. It's not just a one person thing, it's a collaboration thing.
Sure. And what is your most natural way to correct lens distortion? Lightroom, Photoshop, correct lenses?
Lightroom would do, Photoshop would do, any of the sophisticated top-end software would do that. And I love using Photoshop, and there is so many tools that the photographers have, and that the architectural photographers, it's a gift that really you can correct everything. And I'm from the film era, and it has come a long way to correcting all the distortions and such.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Very, very interesting. Sue, how'd you like to talk a little bit about how you work with your photographers when you do a project?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, trying to keep it mute. We actually do work with photographers in 2 ways. We work with them for the benefit of models and structures, and then we also work with them for the benefit of our collateral pieces for the purposes of entry into these types of competitions. So those are 2 different types of photographers, and one certainly is more architectural and actually more focused on the structure, which clearly everything we've just seen is a perfect example of being sensitive to the environment, sensitive to the light, sensitive to the lack of clutter, and how you're going to best exhibit, whether you're entering to exhibit a model, meaning the furniture, or you're entering to exhibit and promote the structure of the place. And I think that there's nuances to each of those things, and certainly the professional photographer, along with you being there with your eye through theirs at the same time, will help demonstrate each opportunity to its greatest benefit. So that's one set of photography. The other photography that we use, as I mentioned, is for the benefit of of submitting things like brochures and ads and things that are physical, that because at this point in time, all the judges are not in one space like they used to be, where we used to have to submit actual physical pieces that they could go through. It's important that you submit something that represents, to the best of your ability, what the brochure looks like, or what the collateral piece looks like, or what the ad looks like. And that needs to be professional as well. And doing something like fanning it out with its pieces, or being able to show examples of how all the direct mail pieces tied into the marketing of whether it's the website or whether it's screenshot of that all needs to be coordinated, and we try to work with professionals at that end as well. And I think you can see the difference when it's done that way, and certainly it's a little bit of expense. It's not as expensive as contracting a photographer to go out on a site, certainly not, but it does help with the presentation, and it allows you to present something that's a lot more professional in nature. So those are two different ones. And I go back to the model versus, when I say model, furniture model versus the architectural model. And I think, again, they're different. And I think it's important that you understand what the purpose of the entry is. And it may be that you're showcasing a design, a single family home. You're not entering the category that is for the model merchandising. You're entering for the design of the building. And therefore you need to focus your photography on things that are features of the building and not necessarily the great living room set. And I think that's an important differentiator, and one that you need to think about as you contract with the photographer.
Thank you, Sue. And David, as a judge, what do you look for in the photography?
So I think what Sue is talking about is making the photography fit what you're trying to convey. I've done judging where people have entered whole houses, and because they have a beautiful entry, they do a photo of just the entry, but you don't understand the context. You don't understand how the whole house is. So, you know, it's very hard to judge. If you're doing a whole house, then you want to make sure that you show the outside from the front as you approach, from the rear backyard. You want to show the exterior because you're doing the whole house. And the house has to do with the exterior design as much as it does the layout of the rooms. So putting together things and doing shots inside that kind of show multiple spaces so you understand the relationships with them is important as well. Don't clutter it. As Garo was saying, like, you don't want to clutter up the place. You don't want to focus on, if you're doing a whole house, you don't want to focus on the furniture. If you're doing a bathroom, you want to give a nice overall, but you may then look at a lot of things having to do with bathrooms that really make them shine, or details. So you may want the photographer to kind of hone in on the way you did the shower door and the seat in the shower and things like that, or how you did design, you know, lighting to come into the bathroom naturally with transom windows, and show that how it relates. So think of the elements that you put in your statement and what you're trying to achieve, and make sure the photography speaks to that. Because we're looking at, as a judge, you're looking at a lot of different things, and you really want to catch the eye, but also have the photography convey exactly what your purpose in the building was, why you think it's important, what you think were the key features of the house or the key features of the thing. And if you're entering them into your design category, you don't necessarily need the outside. You don't need that, but you want to focus on, you know, the furnishings, the color, the texture of the walls, the ceilings, the details of the stairway, or things like that, because those are kind of the more focused for that. You know, you want to be able to really focus as the judge. You want to be able to see that what they said in the statement, which should be fairly concise and clean, is portrayed and supported by the photography. I think the other thing that judges look at, and I think it's very valuable and often not given full rein, is floor plans, you know, photography is great and it shows things, but you may not understand the relationships. And part of the whole design is getting something that's functional, that you know is good to live in. It's so a graphic plan. Don't put in the construction drawings. Don't put a PDF of the construction drawings. They can't, you don't have time as a judge to figure them out and deal with the line weights and things. Do a very clean, simple plan that conveys what the rooms are and conveys the relationship between them. So many people will put in a set of construction drawings into the set of things as a PDF. That's something we're not going to go through. It's too hard to read. But if you're doing a house, or obviously for the interior design, you don't need, for merchandising, you wouldn't need the plan. But anytime you're doing a house, when you're doing a townhouse, you want to see how that townhouse is. You want to see the exterior to see that it relates to the other townhouse it's attached to, how it relates to the outside. You want to, you know, as a single family house, if it's a custom that you're in the category custom, often it's really good to see a site plan as well, because then you kind of understand a custom house. One of the qualities you look for is how does it relate to its environment, versus a spec house that you know is done on a zillion lots. That's not as important. Maybe how that relates to the patio outside or something like that. But the overall site plan and how you approach the house is not as important. So tailor some of your graphics as well to what your category is, because you expect a higher quality of thought and design when you're looking at a custom home entry versus, say, a spec builder home. And we know that there's a bigger budget usually for that, and there should be the attention to detail in the architect and the landscape architect. So tailor those things, the graphics and the photography, to what is that category. You may end up taking, you know, needing to take 20 photos of a particular project, and you put 6 in for this entry that focus on that, and 6 that focus on the other part you're putting in if you're doing the same project in multiple entries, say for, you know, best house under 2,500 and best interior merchandising. So you want to use the photos. You don't want to just repeat the photos. You want to tailor those to it. One of the other things I just say on photography, I think stressing clear professional photography is going to make it easier for us as a judge to understand what you're trying to convey. Bad photos, cut off photos just don't present well. And, you know, we all know photography is expensive, but if you're putting in these entries, you know, and you happen to have, you know, the client is maybe not developer, ask the developer to help pay for part of it because they're going to use them for something. You can use them. Talk to the builder, talk to the landscape architect. Anybody who has some things in there, you can tie in a few extra photos on a photo shoot that fit somebody else that they can use somewhere else. So, you know, the big expense is getting the photographer out there and doing it. Granted, it takes more time to do a few do more photos, but proportionally, you can get somebody to help contribute so that you're not on the hook for all the photography. And that really, it's such an investment in the project. You're going to put it everywhere. You're going to put it on your website. You're going to put it on Instagram. You're going to put it on Facebook. It is what people see. People are very visual. So if you want to promote yourself as a designer, you want to promote yourself as a builder, you want to promote yourself as a developer, landscape guy, person, they all need visual to get clients.
Hey, David, I know it's sometimes tricky to do, but what is your feeling and what value you think before images are to a project versus the after?
I think if it's a rehab, it's very important. I think that being able to see what was there and make sure that you're kind of doing the same view. So if you had, you know, an old living room, don't do it don't do the view of the old that featured the fireplace, and then the new is from the other side of the room, because it's hard to understand. I think in rehabs, renovations, it's critical to get a few existing. You don't need many, but a couple that just captured what it was. So I think the judges are looking at a lot of things. You got to do things that catch their attention. We're looking at people are presenting their best. So subtle differences can make the difference between winning an award and winning not, because it's often hard where you've got multiple entries to even say. It comes down to fine points and feeling of what you see in the photography, because some of these, you want to give awards to 10 in the category sometimes.
Yes, so I think you're certainly familiar with being able to take one subject and put it in several different categories and do well with that process.
Well, I think, again, it depends on the scale. I mean, obviously, if you're dealing with a large project and clearly the development, sales, and marketing of a large project has many facets. So we're able to carve out within any one project opportunities that can fall in many of the categories that we promote for PRISM, right? So whether it's design, whether it's interiors, whether it's sales and marketing pieces, it's easy because obviously we have to do a lot of it when you're selling a big project. So there's many opportunities for capitalizing on the efforts of a big project that does participate in all the different areas of the categories that we provide. So that's an easy one. I think it's more challenging if you're dealing, by the same token, we can't take a piece of that and participate in the single family section unless it's a development. So the good thing about the way that PRISM has the categories, there's something in there for everyone at some level. And I think the important piece and the takeaway here is that you just still need to put your best foot forward, and you still need to spend the appropriate money on the photography to represent your category no matter what it is. And you, again, I go back to how I started this conversation, you absolutely need to define how you're explaining how your particular entry fits into the category and where it succeeded and why, and how it fits into the context of the entry. So I think that goes without saying no matter what you're entering. I mean, it can be a logo, in which case there's obviously awards for logos. You need to be able to show that logo in usage in various ways, not just a picture of a logo on the wall. So I think that the photography makes or breaks every entry. There's no question about it. And it doesn't matter which one it is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why it's so well organized with all these major categories. And we shouldn't forget the fact that the event also not only recognizes great sales and marketing and merchandising, but also the individuals behind the projects. So we talk about the team players, the rising stars. This is a great opportunity to also give your people some credit for what they do for your company.
Great.
So any other comments from Kitaro, David, Sue?
I would just say, keep things concise, keep things on track, look at it, keep going back to what you're entering and making sure what you're putting in there fits that entry, and don't put in a lot of extra superfluous stuff that doesn't relate to what you're trying to get your award in.
Thank you. And I'll give a moment of silence if anybody, we have 25 of you out there, so thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to take a moment to unmute your phone and ask a question of anybody, I'll give you a few seconds to do that. My money was actually on Cheryl Savage, so I'm surprised she didn't unmute her phone. Savvy words. Come on, Cheryl. All right. Well, Sue Hawks, thank you very much as usual. You do a great job. Kitara Yoshioka, thank you very much for your time. And Mr. O'Sullivan, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you all, and everybody have a great afternoon. Take care.
Be well. Take care.